Have you ever wondered why some people have very few friends, speak very little, yet whenever you stand next to them, you feel this strange sense of calm? As if they carry their own atmosphere, light but deep, quiet but stronger than you'd expect. Society often labels them as distant or cold, but the truth is usually the opposite. Many of these people hold a kind of inner strength that most of us haven't learned to build yet. A strength that both modern psychology and ancient Stoicism consider the foundation of real maturity: emotional self-regulation. I want you to picture something simple, something that could happen to anyone. You're driving, and suddenly another car cuts right in front of you. In an instant, you feel a surge of anger. Your heart jumps, and your whole body wants to react. Most people would snap immediately. But some people who spend more time alone, who think deeply, who keep a smaller circle, respond very differently. They still feel the emotion rising, but they don't let it take the wheel. They exhale, pause for half a second, and in that tiny space, they choose a response instead of an explosion. In psychology, we call this emotional regulation, the ability to notice a feeling. Allow it to exist, but not let it run your life. I once worked with a woman named Emma. Her whole life, people called her cold because she wasn't expressive the way others were. But as we worked together, I realized she wasn't lacking emotion at all. She felt sadness, anger, even deep hurt. She simply refused to let those feelings dictate her behavior. And from a Stoic point of view, that isn't coldness, that's strength. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You cannot control what happens outside of you, but you can always control how you perceive it." Modern neuroscience says the same thing. We have two layers of response: instinct and conscious awareness. People with fewer friends, especially those who live rich inner lives, often develop that second layer much more strongly. They observe their emotions instead of being dragged around by them. Maybe you've been like that before. Maybe people have misunderstood you, thought you didn't care, thought you were distant when in reality, you were simply trying to stay grounded. If that's you, I want you to know this: it's not a weakness. It's a sign of inner discipline. And if you haven't mastered that skill yet, don't worry. Emotional regulation isn't something you're born with. It's a practice, a habit, a daily exercise. It starts with a breath, a pause, one small conscious choice. But those small choices, repeated again and again, eventually become one of the greatest strengths you'll ever build inside yourself. If in the previous part we talked about emotional self-regulation, then now I want to take you a step deeper. The ability to stand strong on your own without feeling like you're missing someone. Have you noticed that most of our insecurities come from the belief that we always need someone beside us? Someone to text us, a group to hang out with, a full weekend schedule. And the moment our calendar is empty, we start thinking something is wrong with us. But people with few friends, especially those who are comfortable being alone, tend to have a very different quality. They don't need a crowd to feel valuable. I'm not talking about the "I don't need anyone" kind of pride. I'm talking about a quiet sense of inner fullness. If they have someone to talk to, they appreciate it. If they don't, they're still perfectly okay. Their inner world is rich enough for them to sit alone without feeling hollow. From a psychological perspective, this is the sign of a stable self. When our sense of self is weak, we cling tightly to the reactions of others. Did they reply fast enough? Did they compliment or criticize? Did they invite me or forget me? But when your sense of self is strong, you still care, but you don't depend on those signals for survival. You don't use other people's reactions as the only mirror to measure your worth. A patient of mine in the US, let's call him Daniel, once told me something I never forgot. Back then, every weekend when nobody asked me to hang out, I felt like the whole universe was saying, "You're not good enough." Now, sometimes I still go out with friends. But on weekends I choose to stay home, read, walk, clean my space, and I no longer feel like a failure. What changed wasn't the number of friends he had. It was the way he interpreted his time alone. And that is deeply Stoic. Seneca said, "The truly rich person is the one who feels complete with themselves." Now, I want you to imagine this. An evening with no notifications, no plans, no messages. Just you, your room, and your thoughts. For many people, that's a terrifying scenario. But for someone growing through the lens of Stoicism, that could be a training room, a place to review their week, to see whether they lived according to their values, where they drifted, and what they want to adjust tomorrow. Inner independence doesn't mean shutting the world out. People with few friends but strong inner stability still love, still connect, still work with others. But they approach people from a place of choice, not from fear of being alone. They say yes because they want to be there, not because they're scared of being left out. They say no without feeling guilty, simply because they respect their own limits. And here's the interesting part. When you stop clinging to people to fill the empty spaces inside you, your relationships become clearer, cleaner, more genuine. You no longer need a savior. You no longer need anyone to prove you're lovable. You simply look for people who can walk with you, share with you, and respect you. That kind of connection, the one chosen from strength, not fear, is what both psychology and Stoicism call a healthy relationship. In the next part, we'll go deeper into another quality that grows naturally from this one. Not everyone gets access to your inner world, and that is not just okay. It's necessary. If the previous part was about inner independence, then this section goes one layer deeper, the ability to be selective. It's a skill that naturally forms as we grow older and live more intentionally. Part protection, part wisdom. Have you ever felt this? You're sitting in a crowded gathering, people laughing, talking over each other, stories bouncing around the room, and suddenly you realize you're drained. It feels like your energy is leaking out, bit by bit. Or maybe you've talked to someone for just 5 minutes, and deep down, there's this quiet voice saying, "Something's off." That doesn't mean you're difficult. It doesn't mean you can't fit in. It simply means your intuition and your heart are doing their job. People with few friends often understand the value of inner peace more than anyone. And because they understand it, they are selective. Not everyone gets access to their inner world. And even fewer get to stay. They choose people based on one question. Can I be myself with this person? Not based on how loud, fun, or exciting the other person appears. From a psychological perspective, this is a sign of healthy emotional boundaries. People with strong boundaries know their emotional energy is limited, and giving it away freely to those who only take is a form of self-harm. So, they prioritize relationships that offer 3 essential things: safety, respect, and support. In therapy, there's a concept called emotional contagion, the idea that emotions spread. Spend too much time with someone negative, and you feel depleted. Sit with someone hot-tempered, and your anxiety rises. But spend time with someone calm, and your whole system softens. People with few friends are extremely sensitive to this. They can feel when a conversation is just noise, when someone seeks attention instead of connection, or when another person's energy takes more than it gives. I once had a patient named Olivia who said to me, "I used to make friends like I was trying to prove I'm likable and easygoing. But as I got older, I realized some conversations drained me so much I had to lie down for hours afterward. Now I choose fewer people, but the ones I keep make me feel lighter, not heavier." Her story reminded me of that powerful line from Epictetus. Not everyone deserves access to your soul. It may sound harsh, but it's the truth. Selectivity isn't building walls. It's building gates. Those who understand you, respect you, and don't disturb your inner peace are the ones who get invited in. Those who bring chaos, drama, selfishness, or manipulation naturally stay outside. Deep people are like master chefs. They don't fill their basket with random ingredients. They choose fewer but higher quality ones. And because of that, their life retains its purity, simplicity, and strength. So if you've ever felt like you have few friends because you're hard to approach, maybe it's time to shift your perspective. You're not difficult. You're discerning. You understand that your soul is not a 24-hour public park. And this selectivity leads directly into the next quality I want you to explore: the ability to look inward through introspection. Because only those who dare to live authentically and choose intentionally are brave enough to truly examine themselves. If selectivity protects your energy from the noise outside, then introspection, the ability to look inward, helps you face the world within. And this is one of the most defining traits of people who have few friends but deep souls. They spend time with themselves instead of running around looking for answers from others. I want you to imagine this: an evening with no phone, no notifications, no one calling, no plans pulling you away. Just you, a small lamp, and your thoughts. For many people, that's the moment anxiety kicks in. But for the deeply introverted, the quiet ones, or those who practice Stoic living, that silence is precious. It's the rare space where they can finally hear the inner voice that gets buried under the noise of daily life. Marcus Aurelius used to journal every night to examine his soul. In psychology, that practice is called self-reflection, a skill that helps us understand why we think what we think, why we react the way we do, and what needs to change. People with few friends naturally do this, not because they're lonely, but because they're familiar with their inner world. I remember a former patient of mine named Ethan. He told me that one day he realized he had been using busyness and social interactions like anesthesia to avoid facing the truth that he was living out of alignment with his values. Only when he started sitting alone, in silence, writing down uncomfortable questions like, "Why did I overreact to this?" or "Why did that hurt me so much?" did he finally begin to change his behavior. He told me, "It turns out the thing I avoided the most was exactly what helped me heal." That is the essence of introspection, not running from your inner darkness, but sitting down to understand it. Scientifically speaking, when you slow down to observe your emotions, the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear and anger, calms down. At the same time, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, conscious, grounded part of your mind, activates more strongly. In other words, simply daring to look at yourself puts you in a more awakened, more conscious state. People with few friends are often like spiritual divers. They're not afraid to dive into the deep places, the ones most people avoid. They ask themselves, "What do I actually want? What fear is driving me right now? Am I living by my values or just by habit? And when they find the answers, they don't need to announce them. They adjust quietly. They pivot quietly. They rebuild quietly, steadily, and consistently. This creates a kind of peace that others often misunderstand as coldness. But it isn't cold. It's the result of hundreds of hours of honest conversations with their own soul. Introspection makes them react less and reflect more. They don't trust every emotion without examining it. They don't get pulled into drama. They don't rely on noise to fill their emptiness. They can tell what is a real signal and what is just static. And once a person builds an inner world that is deep and stable, they naturally develop something else. A quality that carries the unmistakable spirit of Stoicism, the ability to grow in silence. That's exactly what we'll explore in the next part. When someone becomes familiar with introspection, familiar with listening, observing, questioning, and sitting with themselves, they eventually step into a place that not everyone has the patience to reach: the ability to grow in silence. This is a signature trait of people who have few friends but deep inner worlds. They evolve, they improve, they transform, but all of it happens quietly. No noise, no showing off, no chasing validation. And far from making them weak, this quiet growth makes them astonishingly steady. Have you ever met someone like that? They disappear for a few months. And when they return, they're calmer, stronger, clearer. Not because they met someone extraordinary or experienced a dramatic life event, but because they spent time working on themselves. In psychotherapy, I call this silent growth. It often shows up in people who can self-reflect, who aren't afraid of solitude, and who know how to create structure in their own lives. They understand that to change a habit, they don't need to announce it to 10 people. They just need to do it. To heal a wound, they don't need to post about it online. They simply need to sit down and face it. To upgrade themselves, they don't need applause. They just need consistency. One of my former patients, let's call her Maya, once told me a sentence I never forgot. I realized I learn the fastest when no one knows I'm learning. She left social media for a while, started journaling every day, practiced meditation, and learned to read slowly instead of rushing. And after just 6 months, her inner world felt reorganized, almost rebuilt. No one else knew what that process looked like, but everyone could see the result. What's fascinating is that people who grow in silence often carry a kind of peace that's hard to describe. It doesn't come from having a perfect life. It comes from knowing how to create order inside themselves, no matter how chaotic the outside world becomes. From a Stoic perspective, this is incredibly familiar. Seneca said, "Difficulty awakens virtue." Meaning, hardship, stillness, loneliness, these aren't enemies. They're training rooms. In those rooms, every sadness becomes a lesson. Every failure becomes a practice round. Every moment of silence becomes a chance to rebuild yourself truer, stronger, more aligned. And there's something important I want you to remember. Silent growth is not hiding from life. It is preparation. Preparation for longer journeys. Preparation for the better versions of yourself waiting ahead. Preparation for the life you actually want to build. People with fewer friends are rarely in a rush. They understand that trees grow in silence. Water flows underground without a sound. A strong heart doesn't need to shout. And the biggest changes in life usually come from the moments no one else sees. And it is from this quiet, steady growth that they develop the final quality: A quality that often surprises others but is deeply Stoic at its core. An unshakable inner peace. Untouched by people, untouched by crowds. And that is exactly what we'll explore next. When someone becomes accustomed to growing in silence, what emerges isn't coldness, but a kind of peace that's almost impossible to shake. This is a trait I see over and over again in people who have few friends but strong inner lives. They don't show their strength, yet you can feel it. Standing next to them quiets something inside you, even when the world outside is chaotic as ever. I want you to picture this. You walk into a crowded room. Some people are talking loudly, laughing, telling stories, and debating. But in one corner, there's a person who is simply calm. Not awkward. Not insecure. Just steady. They're not trying to get attention. They're not trying to join every conversation. They're not restlessly checking their phone every 2 minutes. But if you sit next to them, exchange just a few words, you can feel it. Inside this person, there is order. Psychologically, that's the sign of a nervous system that has learned to regulate itself. In Stoic terms, it's someone living close to their inner citadel, the inner fortress Marcus Aurelius often wrote about. They aren't peaceful because their life is easy. They're peaceful because they've stopped trying to control things that were never theirs to control. They don't chase every debate, don't dive into every drama, and don't feel the need to be everywhere. They choose their battles wisely. A friend of mine, let's call him Daniel, once worked in an extremely noisy environment, open office, non-stop chats, constant emails, back-to-back meetings. He was always stretched thin, like a guitar string pulled too tight. He told me, "It feels like my brain always has 20 tabs open and all of them are screaming." When he began practicing Stoic principles, he didn't do anything dramatic. He simply, gradually left unnecessary group chats, turned off notifications, stopped jumping into pointless debates, and most importantly spent more time alone. Not to escape, but to reorganize his inner world. After a few months, he said something I still love. "My external life isn't that much less stressful, but inside, I don't feel like I'm being dragged anymore." That is Stoic peace. Not the absence of waves, but no longer being the leaf tossed around by every wave. People with few friends but strong inner lives tend to share this mindset. They don't see a packed schedule as a badge of success. They don't measure their worth by invitations, events, or social circles. They understand that every unconscious yes to the world is an invisible no to themselves. So they choose less noise, less proving, less participation in things that don't truly matter. Neurologically, this gives their nervous system room to breathe. Less stimulation, less comparison, less react right now pressure. And gradually, peace stops being something they feel only on vacation. It becomes the baseline of their daily life. And here's the fascinating part. This peace makes them magnetic. Not in a loud, attention-seeking way, but in a presence that makes others lower their voices. Be more honest. Slow down a little. If you've ever met someone like that, you know. They never have to say, "I'm strong." You feel it. They never preach, "Slow down." Their life already invites you to. And if something I'm describing sounds like you, maybe you're not broken the way you once believed. Maybe the feeling of being alone, quiet, different, isn't a curse but an invitation to build a peaceful life from the inside out. And let that peace guide every decision you make. In the next part, we'll take this peace and connect it to something crucial in modern life. Boundaries, the ability to say no without guilt, and how to protect your inner world while still being kind to others. Something fascinating happens when you begin to find peace within yourself. You start realizing you simply can't keep pleasing everyone anymore. And that is where boundaries begin to form. Let me connect this to the previous section. When your inner world becomes quieter, you suddenly sense very clearly this simple truth. What nourishes me, and what drains me. And this is a trait I see in nearly every person who has few friends but strong inner lives. They know how to say no, not because they're cold, but because they know exactly what they're protecting. Have you noticed something? Here in the US, and really, everywhere, we are taught from a young age to be nice, be agreeable, be pleasant, be cooperative, say yes, to avoid disappointing anyone. But nobody teaches us how to say no without guilt. So what happens? A lot of people end up living like this. Schedules full, hearts empty, plenty of people around, but almost no one who truly understands them. Everyone likes them, yet they can barely like themselves anymore. People who have few friends but a strong inner core walk a different path. They understand a very Stoic truth. If you don't set boundaries, life will set them for you, usually through burnout, emotional explosion, or collapse. A friend of mine, let's call her Olivia, was the classic go-to person. She was the good friend, the helpful coworker, the dependable daughter, the one who said, "Sure, I can handle it," before even thinking about it. But one day she sat in front of me in a therapy session, eyes exhausted, and said, "I don't understand why I'm always tired, irritated, and then guilty for wanting a break." Psychologically, her body was in a state of red alert. Burnout, resentment, and the feeling of being used, even though she was the one who never knew how to stop. When she began practicing Stoic principles, I didn't tell her, cut everyone off, stop helping people. Of course not. That would only create another extreme. Instead, we began with one simple question one Marcus Aurelius himself would approve. Is this truly essential for you? And does it align with the values you want to live by? Slowly, she learned to pause before answering. Let me check my schedule and I'll get back to you. Recognize which requests were coming from habit, not respect. Tell the difference between helping out of love and carrying everything out of fear of being disliked. And something interesting happened. She went from being always available to be selective. And guess what? The people who genuinely valued her stayed. The ones who only saw her as a free problem-solving service quietly disappeared. From a Stoic perspective, boundaries are not walls. They are gates. You don't shut the world out. You simply don't let anyone walk in whenever they want. You still love, still help, still give, but you don't sacrifice yourself in the process. Epictetus expressed this beautifully. Some things belong to us, our thoughts, choices, and actions. And some things do not, how others react, whether they understand us, or how they judge us. Boundaries are the place where you stand and say, "This part is mine. I am responsible for it." That part is the emotions and reactions of others. I respect it, but I don't control it. And I won't live according to it. In everyday life, boundaries from someone with a strong inner world look very simple. A text at 11 p.m. about something non-urgent? They can wait until morning. Not because they don't care, but because they respect their rest. A social invitation when they know they have no energy? They can say, "Thank you for inviting me. I need a quiet night tonight. Maybe next time." A conversation turning disrespectful? They can gently stop it. "I don't want to continue the conversation this way. Let's talk again when we're both calmer." No drama. No yelling. No justification. Just clarity. If you've ever felt that you're too nice, and therefore easily used, or too afraid of disappointing others that you betray yourself instead, I want you to remember something. Boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. And someone who doesn't respect themselves will always struggle to receive genuine respect from others. People with few friends but strong inner lives have accepted the initial cost. Some people may call them cold, distant, or not as enthusiastic as before. But in the long run, they build something far more valuable. A life where relationships are based on respect and freedom, not fear and exploitation. In the final part, we'll bring everything together. From emotional regulation, independence, selectivity, introspection, silent growth, and boundaries, we'll see how all of these create a form of inner wealth that Stoicism offers to anyone willing to practice. There's something I really love about people who don't have many friends but have a strong inner world. They don't need to be loud. Yet their presence always leaves an impression. Not because they talk a lot, but because of who they are when no one is watching. And that's what I want to wrap up with in this final part. If you look back at everything we've talked about in this video: emotional regulation, inner independence, selectivity, introversion, inner peace, boundaries, they all share one thing in common. They're not gifts you're magically born with. They're the result of living awake to yourself, day after day, choice after choice. Stoicism never said, "Become cold and cut yourself off from the world." Quite the opposite. Stoic philosophers lived in the real world. They were emperors, slaves, statesmen, people who faced war, illness, grief, and loss. But they shared one commitment. The world can be chaotic, but inside myself, there will be an order. I want you to look back at the journey we've taken in this video. You learned how to see your emotions clearly, not denying them, but also not letting them drive your entire life. You saw the value of inner independence when your life no longer depends entirely on other people's attention, approval, or invitations. You understood why having fewer, more selective friendships can be far better than having many shallow, exhausting, or fake connections. You saw the beauty of introversion in those quiet spaces where you understand yourself more. Instead of just finding more things to do, you touched a kind of peace, not the peace that comes when everything is perfect, but the peace that can exist even when life is still messy. And you recognized the power of boundaries, that point where you stop trading your self-respect just to keep people in your life who don't truly value you. If any of this sounds like you, or like the person you're trying to become, I want you to know something. You are not broken because you have few friends, because you like being alone, or because you don't fit into loud, crowded social circles. In today's world, where everyone is competing to make noise, the people who can keep a conscious quiet inside are the rarest and often the most precious. So let's imagine this for a moment. You wake up in the morning, open your eyes, and what you feel first is not panic, not the rush of tasks, unread messages, and people you must keep happy. Instead, you feel a quiet, Steady line running through your chest. This is what I care about. This is what I'm moving toward. And no matter who praises or criticizes me today, I'm still me. Life doesn't suddenly become easy because of that. But you become steadier. And sometimes, that's all you really need. From a psychological point of view, these qualities protect you from so much unnecessary suffering, emotional burnout, dependence on validation, social anxiety, and long-term toxic relationships you stay in only because you're afraid of being alone. From a Stoic perspective, they help you live like a quiet warrior. No showmanship, no need to prove yourself, but always working on who you are little by little, every single day. You don't need to become a philosopher. You just need to become someone who is a little more honest with yourself than you were yesterday. And now, I want to ask you a very simple question, one that might change the way you see yourself. If you stopped trying so hard to not be lonely and started learning how to become a good friend to yourself, how would your life look 6 months from now? Let that question stay with you for a while. Maybe tonight, when you turn off the screen, lie down in bed, and the room becomes quiet, you'll feel a little less afraid of the silence. Because now you know, silence is no longer an empty void to fear, it's a space where you slowly come back home to yourself. If what I've shared resonates with you, I want to invite you to go a little further with this channel. Hit like on this video not just to please the algorithm, but as a small signal to yourself. Yes, I choose this path, the path of building inner strength first, and worrying about everything else later. Subscribe to Stoic Mind Origins and turn on notifications, so each week we can sit together like this in quiet conversations that are stronger than all the noise. And I truly want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me, which quality in this video do you see most in yourself? And which quality do you want to practice more in the next 30 days? Write it down, not just for me to read, but for you to start making a commitment to yourself, starting today. Thank you for staying with me all the way until the end of this video. Take a deep breath, look inward, and remember, no matter how many friends you have out there, the most important friendship you will ever have is the one between you and yourself.